Father, we thank you for your great love towards us. It's new every day. It's fresh every day. That's the way we should receive it. Something brand new, something wonderful. We thank you now for this time together. May we use it wisely. May we hear your voice. May we be listening to know your will that we may do it. We thank you that you've called us. May we be willing to share with others. We thank you in Jesus' precious name. Amen. There are people who study the Bible, and I'm not quite sure what they're getting out of it, because they come up with questions instead of answers. And one of the questions that they come up with is, as Jesus was going through his life, did he really know he was headed towards the cross? Yeah. And they ask those questions for lots of strange reasons. One of them is, as a human, did he really know everything? That's one question they come up with. Another question they come up with, what kind of communication was there between divinity and humanity? The two natures. See? And they ask all kinds of questions you can't get answers for. Yeah, it's easy to ask questions. It's a lot harder to get some meaningful answers. And so they come up with optional things. They say, well, did Jesus have to die on the cross? Could he have died another way? What if the Jewish people had been faithful? What if the church had accepted him? And they come up with all kinds of weird stuff, see? And once you get on that truck, it never stops. You're just always asking questions and never getting answers. That's what Paul meant when he said, always studying, ever learning, but never coming to anything. All right, we're going to look at it today. I'm not sure how far we can look at it, because the Bible really has a lot to say about just this one little subject about what did Jesus know? What kind of clues can we pick up? Let's look at John, the first chapter. We'll start moving through some of it just to see, because we are approaching the cross now. Okay. In John 1:51, he saith unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So, how could that be done? Ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. That could only be done through the cross. There's no other way that can be done. Now, of course, the old patriarch Jacob had a picture of this. The angels coming up and down. Jesus is the link. But he can't be that link without the cross. And we're going to see why as we go along. But this is a clue. In his mind, we can pick up something that's happening in his own mind about the cross, even though he doesn't say it. Okay? So that's what we're going to look at. Some of the clues. Chapter 2, verse 4, when Mary at the wedding asked him to help out the situation and make some more grape juice. Yeah, it says wine, doesn't it? But it wasn't intoxicating stuff. He never would have done it. It was healthful, really good, expensive, high-grade grape juice. Okay, so notice what he says in verse 4. Woman, now he was not being disrespectful. Woman, mother, woman, what have I to do with thee? It's kind of a really intimate thing he said there. Mine hour is not yet come. What do you mean? Mine hour. He knew something, didn't he? He's just not saying, I don't want to go public yet. That's not what he's saying. He said, mine hour hasn't come yet. I have something to do here. I have a work to do. But it isn't out in the open yet. It isn't complete. So here's another little clue here, because he says this mine hour more than one time. We're going to see how he meant it as we go along here. In verse 19, Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Well, what's that sound like? Destroy is the big word here. He knew. He knew he was headed for death, and he knew more than just the idea of it, because he said in 3 days. He knows a lot of details. So these people who say he didn't know what was coming, they're not reading the Bible closely enough. We're just in the first chapter. See? All right. Chapter 3, verse 14. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Well, he didn't mean exalted. Human beings were going to do that to him. They were going to lift him up on that tree. And he knew it. Here in the very first part of John and in Matthew and Luke, Jesus is expressing what he knows, and he's just giving clues, and there's a reason why he's not saying more. But he's letting us know. He knows the Old Testament. He knows the plan of his Father. He's moving towards it, and he knows it's going to involve the cross. So there never was an option. When people tell you it could have happened another way, be very careful. Jesus knew how it was going to happen all the time. All right. So he's going to be lifted up. And of course, we have some very, very strong information here as the serpent was lifted up. Well, how was that serpent lifted up? Yeah, on a pole, a brass pole. So he was telling, I'm going to be lifted up on a pole. Now, it turned out to be a cross, but the word stauros means a spike in the Greek. The Jehovah's Witnesses take that stauros word and they say it was not a cross. Well, they're missing it. They're missing it. It was a cross. But the word by itself means a pole. Okay? All right, so continuing. Verse 34. Jesus saith unto them, my meat, my food, is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Now, could he possibly finish the work without the cross? It's not possible. See? All right. I'm going to have to back up here because I have a question here. Where am I here? Verse 6 of chapter 2, is that what we're dealing with? And there were set there 6 water pots. Is that the verse? Of stone, after the manner of purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. The purifying, I'm not sure I can answer that with a definitive thing. The Jews had lots of purification rites. They didn't actually deal with bacteria. But I think this is referring to one of the purification rites. Now, since you brought up the point and we went back there, that's all I can say on that without starting to speculate. The point that I would like to bring you back to, though, in this particular chapter is the water. Why did Jesus use water? That's it. The water, of course, is a symbol of His divinity. So this is part of why He said, mine hour has not come yet. I'm going to have to express my divinity in this. And the wine itself, what color was it? The color of blood. So we have the water and the blood. That's what happened at the cross. See? All these little clues are hiding everywhere. Thank you for the question, because I never would have gone back there. Okay, so let's go on now. Jesus, in the verse we just read in chapter 4, is dealing with a mighty work that He knows He's going to accomplish. And that mighty work is done at the cross. Now, He does a lot of other things getting there, but that's it. That's the issue, the cross. He had to know about it to talk like this. All right. In Matthew, these are all familiar scriptures, aren't they? We're not going to see anything new. We just want to see what they say. Matthew 9, verse 6. But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins. Then saith He to the sick palsy, Arise, take up your bed, and go into thine house. Now, when He said He has power to forgive, where's He going to get that power from? There's only one way. After the cross, He said, all power has been given me. So this is through faith in what the Father was doing in Him, where He was going, and the cross is in this verse, the power of His cross. So continuing, by the way, Peter tells us about that Jesus, His precious blood, and He was on the tree. There it is, the cross. Chapter 9, verse 15. Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? So what's He alluding to? He's going to be taken away. So right, the only way that happens is at the cross. So all these statements, they're not direct. He knows they're not equipped to understand what He's saying. Even if He said the cross, they wouldn't know what He was saying. Now, we can prove that because at the end of His 3.5 years, He tells them plainly, and they still don't get it. All right, so then in that verse, but the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away. And then they will fast. They will mourn. He's gone. So He's telling them, something is coming. Something is coming. And of course, He knew what it was. All right. John 5:21. I'm sorry to skip around, but that's the way these come out. For as the Father raises up the dead and quickeneth them, even so the Son quickens whom He will. He's saying He's going to give life. He Himself will give life. Well, in the plan of salvation, the only way He can do that is through the cross. He can't do that without the cross. I'm going to start moving a little faster because I'm going to run out of time, I can see. I'll give you the scripture, you write it down. Let's move on. Matthew 10:38 and 39. You know the scriptures. He says, He who's trying to save his life will lose it. And the person who loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, he is saying something about himself, and we tend to miss those things in the Scriptures. When he tells somebody what they can do, that means he's doing it. All right? So, how then does he find life to give? It's by losing it. It's the only way he can do it. So that's another big clue. In Matthew 12:40, as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Well, he's flat saying, I'm going to be buried. And that happens after the cross. He's not going to die of old age. So it's all there. Chapter 13, verse 44. And sometimes we miss a nice detail here. Verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he hath, and buyeth that field. Well, we know what this is. That's the pearl. Okay? He sells everything he has to get the pearl. Now, the way we usually tell that story is when the guy finds Jesus, he surrenders all to Jesus. And that's in the story. No question about it. That's part of it. But this is really about Jesus. He sold everything for the pearl. We're the pearl. Jesus gave everything for us. How much is everything? Well, not just giving up heaven. He gave up his whole life. He died on the cross. We can't be redeemed without the precious blood. It's not possible. So, well, everything he did, he was aiming to that cross. Always moving towards the cross. The disciples, his own people, he told them, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you're not part of it. You don't have what God is doing. You don't have me in you. And of course, they thought, they scratched their heads, and I said, eat his flesh? Well, that's unclean. That's unclean. We can't do that. Drink his blood? Now, God told us not to take the blood. And so right away they said, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. We thought he was the one, but now he's sounding too rash. And they left. They were gone. Of course, what he was really saying was, to take him in all the way. Take him in. Today we would say it differently. We have an idiom. Drink it in. So, they're not telling you to drink anything. They just say, hey, take it all in. Just drink it in. And that's what he was telling them. You just have to open yourself and let it all come into you. But flesh and blood is talking about the cross again, because he knows what it's going to cost for him to go to that cross and what it's going to mean on that cross. We'll try to get to that later as we get past what we're doing here with this. I hope we can do it today. In Matthew 18, he talks about seeking the lost sheep. Verse 12 is the one I'm looking at. Now, he is saying that he has come to seek, to find, and to restore. And you can't do that by just talking to people. He's got to die on the cross for this to happen. He can only restore by way of the cross. So if you notice how he's saying these things, who he's saying it to, and what he's trying to get across, he always has that in the background, and he's not telling them. But he knows it. He knows it. And this is the part that the theologians get all confused about. He really knows all this. He tells him in John 7:33, yet a little while. I'm with you now, but yet a little while, and I'm not going to be here anymore. And you're going to go looking for me, and you won't know where I am, and so forth. Well, he knows he's going to go someplace. He knows he's going to do that. John 10, maybe we better look at that, because there's several scriptures. John 10:11. I am the shepherd good. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. Well, what did he just say? Yeah, there's the cross very clearly, but they didn't know it. No one knew it because it wasn't clear to them yet, but he knew it. Verse 17, therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life. So there's no mystery to Jesus. He knows what he has to do, that I might take it again. Verse 18, no man taketh it from me. I've had some of our own ministers and school teachers, professors, say, the devil killed Jesus. No, he didn't. The devil didn't kill Jesus. Jesus says, no man takes my life from me.
But I give it.
How could the devil kill Jesus? I lay it down. That's what he says. I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down. I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. So we have to watch out for all those little dark spots. It doesn't matter how smart we are or how much study we do. If we're not paying attention to the Word, something's going to happen to trip us up. Remember, Jesus said, man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word. I said that to 2 Mormons yesterday. I'm hoping they start saying some things that aren't in the Bible so I can repeat that to them and say, well, where is that in the Bible? It says every word in the Bible, not other words. Now, God obviously speaks to people and has other things written through inspiration, but we test them by the Bible. We don't test the Bible by them. Okay? So, by the way, pray, because people keep coming by and I keep talking to them. These 2 particular fellows, I really have high hopes they'll come back, because they're different from any bunch of people I've ever talked to that go walking down the street. They listen when I read the Bible to them. And they look at each other and they're wondering, where'd that come from? We didn't see that one before. Yeah. Okay, so Jesus says, I lay down my life. Luke 12:50. Jesus says, I have a baptism to be baptized with. Well, he knew something was coming, didn't he? I have a baptism to be baptized with. And how am I straitened till it be accomplished? I never noticed before. I have a footnote there in my Bible. I don't know if you have one. For the word straightened. You know what straightened means? My footnote here says pained. I'm in pain until I can get there. moving towards the cross, and he wanted it to come. He says, I'm pained that I'm having to wait so long to get there. Now, he didn't relish death any more than we do. But he knew we couldn't be saved until he got there. That's what it was all about. He wanted to get with the program to get it accomplished so we would have salvation. All right. Well, we're right there, so let's look at it. Luke 14. Verse 27. Now, we see it very plainly. Something has happened. He's going to start talking a different way. We begin picking it up here. Whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Well, he just put it out in the open. Cross. Everybody knew what a cross was. You don't go up there just to suffer a little bit. They put you there to die. That's it. And you don't die right away. People didn't die in one day on the cross. It took days and days. They dehydrated. Their blood started coagulating in them. Things started to crack because they didn't give them anything to drink. They laid there in the hot sun. It was a miserable way to die. And the birds finally figured out you couldn't swat them, and they started picking pieces out of you. A miserable way to die. And Jesus said, the cross. If you don't want the cross, you can't be part of me. Because that's where I'm going, is to the cross. And you're supposed to go with me. We won't go through the parables. We don't have time today, but you'll notice a lost sheep. You'll notice a lost coin. And you'll notice a prodigal. The parables are quite interesting. Just taking those three, there's a sequence. The lost sheep. It's the work of Jesus to go find him. The lost coin. That's in the house. That's the work of the church. And the prodigal son is the attitude of the father towards his children. He goes looking for them. Okay? Now, in chapter 17, verse 25, he says, first must he suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. Rejected. He knew that's what was going to happen. He knew that's what was going to put him on the cross. He knew it was his own church that was going to do it. And he was already starting to suffer through that in a way we don't understand. We'll try to talk about that here in a few minutes. Matthew 20. I think we're going to be able to get through this. Let's see. Verse 18. Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be betrayed unto the chief priests and the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death. Well, he knew it all, didn't he? Every detail. He knew about Judas. He knew about Annas and Caiaphas. He knew they were going to put him up there in front of Pilate. He knew he was going to get crucified. He knew all of it. How can people say there are things he didn't know? He knew it. Verse 28. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto. Oh, did you hear that one? You know, the devil has us all convinced. That's why we're here, is to be ministered to. Yeah. I'm here to be entertained. I'm here to have a good time. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to be satisfied. I'm here for self-esteem. I'm here. Shall I go on? Jesus said, I didn't come here for any of that. I didn't come to be ministered to. It says, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Now, of course, the price he paid was for everybody, but not everybody is going to get it. So he says for many. It's just for those who want it and who trust and who believe. Chapter 26, verse 12. For in that she hath poured the ointment in my body, she did it for my burial. I think it's clear that all the way through in his remarks, it was in his mind exactly where he was going, how it was going to happen. He knew all the details. Let me see if we can use this one here. Chapter 21, Matthew, verse 37. But last of all, he sent to them his son, saying, they will reverence my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him. Oh, let us kill him, and let us seize on his inheritance. They caught him, and they cast him out of the vineyard, and slew him. See, God the Father sent all those prophets, all the messengers, all of his holy people. And none of it worked. So he says, okay, I'll send my son. And we killed him. Yeah, I said, we killed him. You killed him. I killed him. Don't think you weren't there. We're going to spend our time talking about the crowds, the people who were around there, and what they represented, all those different people. And you're going to find yourself in that crowd when we do that. It may surprise you what part you took that day. So he's pointing out the issue here. I'm here so you can kill me. Chapter 26, verse 2. Let's go there first. You know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Now he told them, you know. Why did he say that? He told them. You would assume that if you told somebody something, they'd say, oh yeah, you said that to us. They never heard it. He said, you know, I'm going to be crucified. Verse 18. Go into the city to such a man and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. Oh, something's changed. It's now time. My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. Verse 21. And as they did eat, he said, verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. He knew the whole plan. And we can't say something just happened because somebody didn't do something. No, it all happened just the way he knew it was going to happen. No secret. He knew. Now, why didn't he tell them more sooner? He was, in tenderness, shielding it from them because he knew they can't take it. They won't know what to do with it if they understand it. But towards the end, he began opening it up to them because he didn't want them to be surprised. In Great Controversy, page 594, before his crucifixion, the Savior explained to his disciples that he was to be put to death and to rise again from the tomb. And angels were present to impress his words on their minds and hearts. But, here we go, but the disciples were looking for the temporal deliverance from the yeoman yoke. And they could not tolerate the thought that he in whom all their hopes centered should suffer an ignominious death. Do you get that? They wouldn't tolerate the thought. So when he spoke to them and the thought came to their brain, what did they do with it? They cast it away. They couldn't tolerate that. We don't want to know that. I don't want to hear that. Oh. The words which they needed to remember were banished from their minds. Now, I hope you read that the way I'm reading it. It just didn't drop out. They pushed it out. Banished from their minds. And when the time of trial came, it found them unprepared. The death of Jesus as fully destroyed their hopes as if he had not forewarned them. And we know the history. They were running around acting like they never knew this was coming. So, now here's our part. So, in the prophecies, the future, our future, the future is opened before us as plainly as it was opened to the disciples by the words of Christ. As plainly? How many times have I been asked to give meetings on the closing events? How come? How come? Jesus has already opened it to us as a people as plainly as he did that to the disciples. We should all be experts on it. He told us. No, I never heard it. What do you mean you never heard it? The events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation for the time of trouble are clearly presented. But multitudes of who? But multitudes have no more understanding of these important truths than if they had never been revealed. She's talking about us. Multitudes of Seventh-day Adventists have no more understanding than if Jesus never said anything. Satan watches to catch away every impression that would make them wise unto salvation, and the time of trouble will find them unready. That's an interesting page. You ought to read the whole thing. The Scripture's a safeguard. That's the chapter. And it didn't say the spirit of prophecy is a safeguard. It said the Scriptures. You know, I have to say this. They're not here so I can say it. Those two Mormon fellows, they're very sharp. They're fast. They're really fast. And they know their Bibles. I've never seen that before. Yeah. They can turn to pages and quote back. They're right there. It's really fun talking to them. Yes, beautiful. I really have high hopes for both of these, not to get it now, but to have some seeds planted that later when they see things. I've already told them, what would you think if through the real gift of prophecy I told you what I have learned in the school of the prophets about what's coming in the future, and when you see it, what are you going to do? I told them the real test of a prophet is when they say something, it always happens. I didn't want to tell them all the things their prophets have said that never happened. I just wanted to say, you know, a real one, it always happens. And I'm going to tell you some things, and you can just wait for them to come, because if you're still alive, you're going to see them, and you will know them. You will know.
Like all the disciples did. They saw it, and they knew.
There's some other things. Well, I'm gonna let that go for now. I better keep moving here. I'm doing enough. I might be able to get through what I want to do today. When we sinned, God had a major problem. The devil himself could not have figured out a solution to it. It was too radical. God had two problems. How to set a person right with Him, how to justify that person and remain a just God. Justice has to happen. Death is the result of sin. And God cannot take back that death. When a person sins, they have to die. That's the penalty of sin. There is absolutely no condition on that. It's an unconditional thing. You sin, you die. That's the end of it. That's God's first problem. How to make that not happen that way and still be a just God, have justice, straight line, never bend. And the second problem is this, that after you justify someone through a process, what do you do with their corruption? They're still them. How can a person who's paralyzed live like a just person? He's got two problems. Well, the first one he took care of course, through the merits of Jesus. Jesus took our sin upon Himself. The devil never thought about that one. God taking it Himself. Satan would never have done it. How could God do that? It was beyond Him. But that's what God did. Jesus came and He took the sin. So He took away our guilt. Okay? He took the guilt away of anybody who believes. You know there are a lot of people who have been baptized who are still carrying their guilt around. They don't understand. There is no guilt for you if you gave it to Jesus. You don't have any more. Now, where does the right conduct come from? How does God get that? Well, He's got a way of doing it that people rebel against. They don't want to know about it. He's got a way of getting the right conduct. He says, this is the way we're going to do that. You're going to develop a right character. We say, oh no! I have to develop a right character? No, I didn't say you have to. I said you're going to. This is what we're doing. That's the solution to both problems. The first one is no guilt. I'm taking it all away. The second one is we're going to get you a character so you can do the right thing. You mean I'm going to be changed? Really? Changed? I don't believe it. Oh, too bad. What do you mean you don't believe it? I don't believe in change. Well, nobody does who's natural. You're formed in your nature, and you'll begin to understand the change. You mean the things I can't do, I'm going to do. The things I can't do, I'm going to do. I said, yes. How is this all going to happen? Well, don't start looking at yourself because you have no part in it. Man is excluded from it. This happens at the cross. It happens at the cross. The Father and the Son are working on the plan of salvation, and they never asked us to cooperate in it. We don't have any part in it. The Father and the Son are doing it. That's why what they do works, and what we try to do by ourselves never works. We weren't a part of it. We were excluded from it. Now I'm going to start moving through how we were excluded and what it looks like. Jesus showed us something that I hope doesn't happen with these Mormon fellows right away. It's going to happen, but I'm hoping it won't happen right away so we have a chance to get some things in. Jesus, the closer he got to the cross, the deeper he went into the truths of God. See? And the deeper he went into the truths of God, the less people he found around him. Because the crowds were thinning out. The more truth, the more people left. The more truth, the more people left. Until finally, he's right there at the edge of the cross, and only the disciples are left, the apostles. That's all that's left. All the rest have gone. And finally, here comes the mob. And now the disciples, the apostles, see the absolute truth. They're going to take him and he's going to die. And that was too much for them. They fled. And now he is all alone. No human is going to be with him to help him out. He is all alone in this utter loneliness because he has finally reached the pinnacle of truth with God. And humans don't want that. We go so far and we say, well, I can do that, I can do that, I'll go this way. Oh, wait a minute, they'll go over there. Don't do that with me, God. I don't want to go to Africa. You remember that dentist? Yeah. No. I can only take truth up to here. Well, Jesus wasn't doing it that way. Truth all the way. And when he got there, there was nobody else with him. Constant withdrawals. And so the passion He would suffer alone. Just Him. You know, we can't talk about the pain. We don't know about the pain. We can't go into some of these places. The Bible doesn't describe it. But we're talking about Jesus in utter, complete agony and pain. And we're not talking about just physical pain. We're talking about the kind of pain we don't know about. Probably nobody here has been a schizophrenic. Those poor people have a pain we don't know about. They suffer knowing, I'm completely out of control. There's nothing I can do about this. And that kind of being wiped out, you can't do anything about, something that by itself drives you crazy. And then maybe I'm hearing these voices. I'm in another world. What's going on here? And it comes and it goes. And you don't trust yourself. That's just what the doctors call schizophrenia. But there's a lot more going on in this world. Emotional, mental, quotes, psychological, and of course spiritual behind all of it. Well, Jesus never experienced any of that until Gethsemane. Gethsemane is where all of this was handled and settled. We'll try to spend some time with that, Gethsemane. But He is moving into utter loneliness. We have time to look at just the Scriptures. We won't say a lot about them. Luke 23, Jesus said 7 things. And that's all we can know about His pain. That's all we can know about it. The Bible does not explain it. I don't think there's any way to explain it. We could just listen to the words and try to catch something. Luke 23, verse 34. Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Where was He when He said that? They were nailing Him to the cross when He said those words. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Now, He was quiet. He didn't holler out. He didn't complain. He didn't scream. He just was quiet as they were doing that. The Spirit of prophecy says great drops of perspiration were coming out of Him. He was in pain physically. He was suffering with the weight of the world on Him, plus His physical suffering. We begin to catch a clue of it. Father, forgive them. Verse 43. Verily I say unto thee today, thou shalt be with me in paradise. He's suffering, but He's still saving people. Verse 46. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Those are some words He said. John 19. Verse 26. Now remember, this is all on the cross. Woman, behold thy son. And to John He said, behold thy mother. And then, just down one more verse, 28, it says, I thirst. That's the first one we're going to look at. The rest of them we don't have enough to work with. We can look at these two words, I thirst.
1927.
Then he said, it is finished.
28. I thirst.
I think that's all we'll do. I'll give you two more just to write down. You look them up. I don't have time to move through those. Luke 23:46 and Mark 15:34. All right, I want to look at this word, I thirst. Where did that come from, those two words? He's been hanging up on the cross, but what came before that? We started with Gethsemane, so let's start there. Gethsemane, where he was laying on the ground dying. And then the mob came. And then the kiss. And then the arrest. And then he was taken before the high priest. He's being dragged around at night. He hasn't eaten, by the way. And all night long they're doing something with him. In the morning he goes before the council meeting of the priests. And from there to the Roman governor. And then to Pilate. And then that little private interview with Pilate. Then to Herod. And you know, Herod had him there because he wanted Jesus to do a miracle. He wanted to see him do something. But you know, as you look at that story, Herod never even got to hear his voice. Jesus never said anything while he was in front of Herod. He wouldn't talk to him. And then the soldiers brutally abusing him. Then back to Pilate. And then all the people clamoring for his blood. And then finally the scourging. And then that walk to Golgotha. And finally the crucifixion. And then he's been up there for a while, suffering, the blood coming out of his head, out of his back, out of his front too, because when you scourge with those metal, it wraps around you. And then they pull it, and they pull your skin, the muscles, and everything with it. He was a mess. And he never said a word through all of it. He could not be provoked. He was calm, suffering, but he was dignified. He was standing like a prince the whole time until he couldn't stand anymore. Not a mumbling word came out of him until here. And then he said, I thirst. Oh, what kind of suffering does that mean? There's no way we can get a hold of it. He finally had to speak. I thirst. It was like it was all pent up, and he finally had to say something. And that's all that came out. And then there was that, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Now, Jesus never said something that wasn't true. I've heard all kinds of strange stories about this. When he said, why have you forsaken me? He was forsaken. Now, that doesn't mean the Father went away. The Father was in that dark cloud around him, but Jesus could not see him. He could not sense him. He didn't know he was there.
The pain has a way of doing that.
He was in the deepest sorrow he had ever known or would ever know. And he lapsed into total silence. You know why he lapsed into total silence? Because he didn't get any answers. It was just quiet. He said, "Why?" And nothing came back. Complete silence. He was God forsaken. Now, no human has ever known that. No human has ever been God forsaken. Even the worst person on the earth who the Spirit has been taken away from because they didn't want it. The Father still is there. But Jesus is God forsaken. He had been abandoned. Now, when a person chooses to sin, after God's done everything He can to keep them from sinning, that choice, we can see where it goes if we just look at Jesus a little bit. Because it was His choice to take our place and take it. The total abandonment of God. So there He was. He made sin His own. Whose sin are we talking about? Yeah, that's it. He took my sin. He had no part in it. But He made it all His own. All His own. And of course it wasn't just me by myself, it was the whole world. And we don't know what that means. How could He take every bit of mental illness there ever was into Himself? How could He do that as a human? He now feels all that mental illness, all that sickness, all that. It's been given to Him. He who never sinned. It belongs to Him now. And what is this sorrow that He's feeling? It is a sorrow such as no one will ever know. Because He lived through the sorrow. That sorrow. When someone dies, do you feel sorrow? What is the sorrow? It's the lack of that person. They're not there anymore. When you get really sick and you can't do anything about it and you're laying there, you have sorrow. What is the sorrow? It's for the lack of health. Sorrow is the lack of something. And Jesus had the ultimate sorrow. There is no higher sorrow. He had the lack of God. The lack of His Father. And we will never know what that means because Jesus, in all eternity, from whatever that is, has had fellowship, love with the Father, unbroken through all eternity. And now it's gone. And the only thing He can say is, why? What kind of a question is that? Why? It's an awful cry. We might be able to get a little bit a hold of it because even though He was on the cross, He had no more reference points. Everything was dark. He had no place to stand. He's suspended between heaven and earth. He's floating. He's drifting. He has nothing to attach to. We can't even imagine it. We can just try to approach it, but that's where he was. Total, complete suffering and sorrow and agony with no reference points. And he says, why? And there is no answer. There's only silence. He stood where I should have stood. That should have been you. That should have been me. But he did it instead. And when he took all human sin into himself, he exhausted sin. He exhausted it. There's nothing more that sin can do. He made it to not be. And that's what we need to understand. We still believe in sin. That's a terrible thing to believe in. Yeah. The devil says, oh, you have to sin a little. We need to start talking back to him like we know what's really happening. And say, yeah, I'm a sinner. I'm weak. I don't do everything right. But Jesus has taken care of you and the sin problem. He made it not to be. I have no guilt. Jesus took it all. He took it all. Jesus passes through death. Yeah, he died. He really died. But he passes through death into a new life. He showed death is not the end of the story. He conquered it. He destroyed it. He's had victory over death. He came out the other side into a new life. And now, because he didn't need that new life for himself, he has it to communicate now. He has a life to give. And he communicates it through the power of transformation. And God has answered the two problems. I can be just and justify you because God paid the price. Justice has been satisfied. There is no higher thing that could have happened than God paying the price. God died for sin. And because of that new life, through the cross and resurrection, now you have the victories He won. They belong to you. The crucifixion, the cross is not going to be easy. We're going to have to spend 3 or 4 more times with us to open it up, to look at the different sides of it. This is the first part. I invite you to study it for yourself. Look up whatever you can look up, the sources you have. Study them. Pray about it. Ask the Lord to reveal to you what's really going on there. Because although the cross is in everything, it is the essential issue. After the cross is the resurrection. We'll get to that. We'll get to the ascension. And then there's the high priestly ministry of Jesus giving us all the benefits. And then we'll look at what real victory is, how Jesus does it. Okay. Father, your plan is perfect. We ought to understand that. Your purposes are going to be fulfilled. Nothing can stop them. You're going to have a people who are like Jesus. And there's no reason for any of us not to be included, because you paid the price for each one of us. The plan includes each one of us. You already see us in our faithfulness. You see us 1 billion years from now, 15 billion years from now, what we're doing in eternity. Help us, Lord, to catch glimpses of it also, to know it's true, it's real. Let us be like Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. He says, thanks be to God before we see the victory. In Jesus' holy name, amen.